Hello, my name is Shannon Anderson, and I'm going to do my report on the movie we had to watch for this class, which is called 12 Angry Men from 1957, starring Henry Fonda. I found this movie quite interesting, actually. I was a little apprehensive at first to watch it, just seeing because it's so old, but I actually was very intrigued by it, and what it presented in the movie made me think about different ways of conflict resolution and management and to be able to negotiate. It definitely hit all points on that factor. So for personalities and behaviors, obviously there were 12 jurors on the panel to make a decision for the gentleman, the young 18-year-old who was up for being for the death penalty based on being accused of murdering his father. There were 12 different men from 12 different walks of life. A lot of them looked like they were businessmen, but without knowing everyone's backgrounds, you got from the one main juror, number 8, he was an architect. One worked in stocks, the other one was, into sports. One had quite the personality, like he was almost like a comedian. Some were from foreign, and one actually was relatable to the person that was on trial for murder. So some of the different personalities and behaviors that influenced others are there were some that had very assertive behaviors. There were ones that were very passive that were kind of like the followers. There were other ones that were quite stoic that just sat there and listened and just were already set in their ways the way they were going to vote on the way the gentleman was either guilty or not guilty. The communication that was used throughout the movie, there was very aggressive behaviors from some of the jurors. There were um, different ways they brought communication styles. One was very aggressive toward others, so he was belittling others to make them agree with him based on his assertiveness that he took to each juror, and some were very passive with him and kind of gave in just based on the way he was behaving, and others were um, not affected by his character in the movie. This gentleman right here was the aggressive one. You're not going to intimidate me. I'm entitled to my opinion. Throughout the movie, this gentleman was quite angry. You could see something more was bothering him. Not only did he have a strong opinion in the beginning as to saying this guy is guilty no matter what. I know he is. There's nothing you can do to prove me otherwise. So this is a part of the negotiation process, was to able to convince this gentleman by the end of the movie that there is a possibility that this young man may be innocent, and there is that question to how can we just judge him as guilty without viewing all these other points that they made throughout the movie. Mr. Fonda definitely landed the role as leadership in this movie because he was able to sit back and actually think about it and wanted to have the conversation of how do we know? Let's have this discussion. Let's talk about it more. So his positive approach was the interaction, doing the opportunity of actually talking through what they learned in the court, um, explaining, exchanging of viewpoints, and able to persuade the other people to see how there is a possibility this gentleman may not be guilty. He challenged them, actually, saying, tell me why you feel that they are guilty, or how can you tell me that they are not guilty. So another gentleman, his negative approach was he was controlling the situation. He constantly was yelling, he was fighting, he was bringing tension to the group to maybe make them easier to side with him that this gentleman is guilty just by his aggression and his negative approach. But for Mr. Fonda, he definitely helped encourage and actually wanted to talk through it and bring up scenarios to say, let's talk about this. Let's try to think about how this man could possibly be innocent. I'm not saying he's guilty and I'm not saying he's not guilty, but just to have the conversation, wouldn't you want to be heard if you were on trial for your life? So part of the things I saw here, this juror on the left, juror number 10, he was very adamant that this gentleman was guilty, and a lot of things he would bring up was, these people, we all know these people, they're no good. Well, maybe some. So based on that, he said he's common ignorant slob. He don't even speak good English. And another gentleman in the film who had more of an accent said does not speak good English. So it was something, just his perception, just he was basing it off just where this child grew up, this 18-year-old, that he must be guilty just because of where he came from. They're all trash from where they're from. And there was another gentleman on the juror who actually grew up in that area, so obviously his feelings were heard in the movie, as he, you can't judge a book by its cover. Not everyone is um, that way as they appear. And juror number 8, he was always great at bringing up different evidences of why you should question it. It's always difficult to keep personal prejudice out of a thing like this, and wherever you run into it, prejudice always obscures the truth. I don't really know what the truth is. I don't suppose anybody will ever really know. And just the Christ-centered worldview is, how are we to judge? Only one person can judge, and that's God above. So why not give this person a true time to be able to review any possibilities that he could be innocent, when why would you want that on yourself to be able to say that you caused somebody's end of life? So there were various scenarios in this movie where management and negotiation took place from the beginning till the end. Even in the beginning of the movie, the judge seemed already like, okay, let's just throw the book at this kid. It's pretty obvious. Jurors, go to the room. Like, he was very almost nonchalant, just kind of like, yep, it is what it is. Just go make your decision, thinking it was just a cut and dry case. But clearly, based off just one juror to be able to question all the others, made other people think. When you actually step up and think what could have happened, think about all the processes, the preparation, the introduction. Okay, so yeah, you've heard the case of the attorneys and the defendant and the opposing, and see where you could go with this. Is this enough evidence to make this young man be put to the death penalty? Was there any factors that were not considered during the trial, which obviously when they were back in the juror room, they were able to discuss that further. And then that being able to have the 12 men to be able to be heard by each other and troubleshoot any scenarios that could have happened through the trial, they were able to convince everyone up until the end, all 11 of the 12 jurors, that they felt at the end that that gentleman was not guilty. And then it took them questioning the final man who said he was guilty, you can't change my mind, to realize he was holding a personal vendetta against his own son. And that was what was pushing him to keep that hard stance on the guilty term. And then in the end, he finally buckled and realized that he was just holding that out for himself. And then they were able to say not guilty. And that was how it ended. So I do think this whole movie itself brought in every scenario possible, from negotiation to conflict management, having leadership styles from even the one juror, number one, who was willing to kind of lead the whole team in conversation, to some that just were sitting there quietly, who were not wanting to be, the main subject of it. They wanted to maybe just listen, but the elderly man who actually spoke his part and wanted to be heard, finally was able to. But all the scenarios they brought in to just justify the facts that this young man could possibly be not guilty led to that decision in the end. And I think that was a great way to see where team conflict, team resolution, and actually seeing all the types of personalities that come together to make that decision into play. And I think that was very true to this movie and to what we've learned in this class. Thank you.